right, hello everyone. We are starting our fourth grammar video for the parts of speech unit, and today we're going to be working with pronouns again. This time we're going to be focusing on demonstrative pronouns, relative, indefinite, and interrogative. We're going to start off with demonstrative pronouns. Now, demonstrative pronouns are pronouns that point out a person, place, thing, or idea. Basically, nouns. Okay, so that's the definition of demonstrative pronouns, but let's actually take a look at some examples here. I want you to write out this sentence in your writer's notebook, and we're going to take a look at which one of these words in this sentence point out a noun. Okay, the first one would be, this is first base. This is going to be a demonstrative pronoun. It's literally pointing out first base, right? If you were standing on a baseball field, you could point to first base. This is first base. That is home plate. So we have two demonstrative pronouns in this sentence. Relative pronouns are pronouns that introduce subordinating clauses. Now, for some of you, you might recognize the words subordinating clauses. For others, you may not. Another word for subordinating clauses are dependent clauses. Now, if you still don't recognize that and you don't know what that means, that is okay, because we're going to focus later on in trimester 3 on subordinating or dependent and independent clauses. But what's the most important thing for you to know right now is the subordinating clause is a group of words that, yes, has a subject and a verb, but it cannot stand alone as a complete sentence, which means it can be removed from the sentence because it's just additional information. It also means it cannot be a sentence on its own. Let's take a look at this sentence and you'll see the subordinating clause in action. The race, which takes place every year, attracts hundreds of thousands. When I look at that sentence, there's additional information that's separated by commas in the middle of the sentence. That's my subordinating clause. Now, a subordinating clause can come at the beginning of a sentence as well, but in this case, it's right here in the middle. Okay, that's my subordinating clause. It can be removed. It also could not stand alone as its own sentence. Now, my real goal here is looking for my relative pronoun. My relative pronoun is what starts the subordinating clause. That would be the word which. Other common relative pronouns, words that start subordinating clauses, are words that we call dependent marker words. Okay. Like I said, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this and working with this later in the year. But some of these common dependent marker words, they might be words like because, or when, if, although, which. Those are just some common examples of relative pronouns, or otherwise known as dependent marker words. Great. We're down to our last two pronouns. The second to last one we're going to be working with are indefinite pronouns. Indefinite pronouns are pronouns that refer to a person, place, thing, or idea, right, or nouns that may or may not be specifically named. Well, what does that even mean? Let's take a look at this example sentence we have at the bottom. Just a reminder that you should be writing down these sentences as examples for each one of these pronouns to really help you when later you have to identify them on your own. I heard someone knock at the door. Now we have a pronoun automatically that we can see here, the word I. Remember, I is a personal pronoun. We learned about that last time. But when I take a look at the rest of the sentence, I heard someone knock at the door. I'm not exactly sure who someone is, right? It's referring to a person that's not specifically named. So it's replacing, right, a proper noun of someone's name, but I'm unable to actually name them. So I replace that with the indefinite pronoun of someone. Now, we have a couple examples here of the ability of putting together some prefixes and suffixes, just like we've been learning with our roots unit, that we can put together these prefixes and suffixes to find these indefinite pronouns. So let's make an example of some really common prefixes that we might see in our pronouns, and then we can just put them together like the pieces of a puzzle. So some common prefixes that we might see as a part of indefinite pronouns: any, every, some, or no. For our suffixes, right, the suffixes that come at the end of words, we have time, we have body, one, or where. And then we have just some other common indefinite pronouns that we might see. These would be words like most, or several, less, or all, right? If I said, oh, what time should I come to the meeting? Someone might say, oh, anytime. Anytime is not naming a specific time that I should be there. So that would be an example of an indefinite pronoun. Or who's going to be at the party? Oh, everyone is going to be there. Everyone is not specifically naming groups of people or referencing specific people, but so I know that it's an indefinite pronoun. Interrogative pronouns are pronouns that introduce questions. This is pretty simple and very straightforward. What are those words that introduce questions? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. All right, let's start by practicing identifying these pronouns in the following sentences. Couple reminders. As always, you should be writing these sentences down in your notebook. If you need to pause and take a second to write them down, please do so. It is going to be so helpful to you to have examples written down. The second thing is that we are just going to practice identifying the pronouns that we learned about today. So that means that even if we see a personal pronoun in any of these sentences, we're just not going to identify it right now because we want to focus on the 4 we learned today: demonstrative, relative, indefinite, and interrogative. Let's take a look at sentence number 1. That is a photograph of last year's class. I know that a demonstrative pronoun is a pronoun that points out something else, a noun, right? What is being pointed out here is the noun of a photograph, and that is the pronoun that points it out. So I'm going to mark that with a D for demonstrative. What time should I be there? I know that this is a question that usually gives me a hint, but I want to see if it's starting out with one of those interrogative pronouns. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Well, I see the word what, so I know that that's going to be an interrogative pronoun. So INT for interrogative. Is this the book that you read last year? Now I see another question mark, but is not an interrogative pronoun. But I do have 2 pronouns in this sentence. This is pointing out the noun of the book, right? Just like that points out the photograph. So I know that this is a demonstrative pronoun. But then I see the word that. Well, that in the first sentence was a demonstrative pronoun, but that is not being used here to point anything out. What that is actually functioning as is a relative pronoun, because that you read last year is a subordinating clause. It is extra information that is not needed. The question could just be, is this the book? That you read last year is just providing extra information. So that is a relative pronoun. This is one of my favorite stores. It has everything. Once again, this is pointing out which noun? The stores. So that's a demonstrative pronoun. It has everything. And everything in this case, because it's not being specific, it's not specifically naming something, that is an indefinite pronoun. All right, now it's time for you to write 2 sentences. Couple rules. You must include at least one demonstrative or relative pronoun. You must include at least one interrogative or indefinite pronoun. Make sure that you label the pronouns correctly. Remember the previous pronouns that you have learned. In terms of if you see one, it would be nice if you labeled it on your paper, but I'm not actually going to be counting that when I look over the sentences that you write. And as always, our last step, it's time for you to head to Teams and complete the video number 4 pronoun survey for credit.